Hello everyone and welcome to the Abel Contemporary Gallery. I'm Theresa Abel and I'm extremely pleased to be here with all of you today and with Tom Loeser and Katie Hudnall. And this is their show, Stairing Contest. I think a lot of you know these two. This is going to be recorded and some people might not know so much about them, so I'm going to give a little bit of background information to both of these wonderful artists. Katie Hudnall currently runs the Woodworking and Furniture program at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She received her BFA in sculpture from the Corcoran College of Art and Design and her MFA from Virginia Commonwealth University in Furniture Design and Woodworking. Her work has been included in many publications, including the American Craft magazine, and she has exhibited nationally and internationally, including the Museum for Art and Wood, the Renwick Museum. And she has received numerous grants and residencies, too many to mention here. Hudnall maintains a studio practice, and when she's not teaching, she spends her time, in her words, making tools for problems both real and imagined. Tom Loeser served as head of the wood and furniture area at UW-Madison from 1991 until 2020. He holds a BA from Haverford, is that right?
Yeah.
College, a BFA from Boston University's program in artisanry, and an MFA from the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. Loeser designs and builds one-of-a-kind functional and dysfunctional objects that are often carved and painted, and always based on the history of design and object making as a starting point to developing new forms and meaning. He has received 4 Visual Artist Fellowship grants from the National Endowment for the Arts. In 1993, he spent 6 months in Japan on an NEA Creative Exchange Fellowship. Over the years, he has collaborated with his wife, the artist Bird Ross, on numerous projects, including work for the Madison Children's Museum, the Stoop Project as part of the 2013 Wisconsin Triennial at the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. In 2020 and 2024, Loeser completed 2 more public seating projects for the Madison Public Library System. And I could say a lot more about both of these people. They have very long CVs, but that's enough. I just want to take a minute with this audience. Many of you know that the Madison creative community recently lost Sylvie Rosenthal, an amazing artist, woodworker, and human. And the 3 of us would like to honor that loss with 60 seconds of quiet acknowledgement in recognition of everything that Sylvie does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is Katie and Tom's second show in this space, which was great. The first show was called Boxing Match, and it was in 2022, and it was boxes. I'm wondering if the 2 of you could first talk about if you approached this show differently than that show.
I think the short answer is yes. A little bit. I mean, yeah.
Well, I think boxes were in each of our repertoire.
Right.
Like we both make a lot of boxes along
Right.
the way while we're doing
Yeah.
other things. So boxes was sort of like a thing that we had anyways. And so,
Right.
Right.
It was an easy overlap.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was an obvious thing to pick up sort of where we were and then have a little episode of box making.
And then we were sort of in town both working on those things, and we met a couple times. We met at the Victory
Yeah.
and like had lists of like what boxes could be or what they could do. We sort of talked about abstractly the show, and at some point decided that we would make boxes that we would give to the other to finish.
Right.
And this time, I feel like we knew we wanted to do it. We were like, the last time was a success. We're going to figure something out. And then I was so busy working on another show, and we were like, I want to make these stoops. And so I was like, well, I want to honor those pieces somehow, and I sort of react to them. But I don't make stoops.
But I would also say, going back to the box thing, that we did all these sort of high-minded list-making
Right.
conceptual things that we were going to work on together.
Yeah.
But in the end, we both went back to our studios and pretty much made what we wanted to make.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're great collaborators.
No, I mean, I think like I love your work so much, and it's been an inspiration to me for years. And I think trying to collaborate with you would be intimidating for me, but showing up with something that could sort of like be happy in a room with your stuff felt easier.
Yeah.
That felt like a way that like, you know, I knew you were going to make something playful and colorful, and so I was thinking, how do I do something playful that shows up and honors that, doesn't overpower or underpower it? Because at some point, Tom and I were sort of talking, and you said, I think you could just show anything. Like, what do you have? Like, just bring anything. And I was like, I can't. Like, I got some weird shit. I'm not going to just put it in that room with your beautiful stoops. I wanted something that related to them. And then in one of the conversations, I started thinking, well, what do you see in front of stoops all the time? You see toys. Like, kids have left their toys out. And that's where it started. Was I made a couple of these sort of rolling toys, and I was like, and I was working on a class that I was going to teach on movable toys anyway. So I was like, well, maybe it could be those. And then I made the stair toys, and I was like, stoops are stairs.
Yeah.
Like, I can make stairs, and we talked about it, and you were like, they don't have to be big. They just be like, they can just be sketches. And I think you gave me the permission to play at a really tiny scale, which was, it felt ultimately really good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good description. And just to be clear, I made the three big things, and even the things that are sitting on them, and everything there is Katie's. Yeah. So.
Almost everything.
That, yeah.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Tom's model for that piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this one, we weren't quite sure. This one got sort of deeper into the game before we figured out what the theme was.
Yeah, you didn't give me the title for
And
a while.
what held the show together. But in the end, I sort of like this one because the things that I made are so completely different from what Katie made, but they actually hold together.
Right.
I think like they felt like a great anchor for me to like then sort of like imagine and play. And in a way, I felt like the boxes were, even though they were the same objects, they were sort of more different in a way. Or like, you know what I mean? Like it was lovely, but I feel like I got to use your work as a playground to play and make my work, and that was wonderful.
Yeah, it feels more like a response.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
It's not a collaboration, but it's
A response.
Absolutely. It's a conversation.
Yeah, maybe a collaboration, but not at the same time, like a collaboration through time.
Right, yeah, no, that's cool. So let's talk about the title. So this is the second time you've used puns as titles for your shows.
Yeah.
And I think it's appropriate not just because it's alluding to what the work is about, but you both seem to have a sense of humor in your work. Is that right? I think there's something.
Really serious every last
minute. So I was just thinking about sort of a lightness. No matter how beautifully crafted or sophisticated the final objects come out of your studios, there's always that lightness and that sense of humor. And as artists working, both from the beginning Was that something intentional that you tried to infect in your work, or is it just something that happened? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can start. I think I think a lot about function and furniture and functional objects and how they traditionally operate in the world. And then I try to subvert that in a way that's engaging.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if sometimes it ends up being humorous. I mean, I have a mini.
Not like haha funny.
Yeah.
Right.
But so I have sort of
a
like a mini rant, which is that my work, when people write about it, a word that gets applied to it very often is whimsical.
I was just gonna like that. Yeah.
And I don't really like that
Does
word.
anyone want that word applied to their art?
And so for me, they're serious, like they're
Yeah.
serious considerations of the thing that I was thinking about.
Yeah.
So there's a distinction there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it if people. I guess I want people to find them engaging and a little bit subversive.
Yeah, and maybe humor is the wrong word. Maybe
Yeah.
playful is a better word. There's a lightness to it. Yeah. What about you?
I agree. I mean, I agree with the word whimsical too, and it happens to me a lot. And I think, like, if you think about the word whimsical and you think about the word whim, like achieving the sort of complicated shapes and patterns that Tom has on his work, there's not a whim to that, right?
Right.
Like there's so much effort and work that has gone into that, and so much history of understanding the material that has gone into that. So it is a little bit frustrating. Like we very intentionally set out to make these incredibly goofy things, and worked really hard in sort of getting there. I don't mean to imply that your work is goofy, Tom, but that there's like that sense of playfulness.
Yes, that sense of play. Play is better. Yeah.
And yeah, I had a moment in grad school a million years ago when I was pretty young still. I was trying to make furniture. I came from a sculpture background and I didn't have a fine woodworking background, and I was sort of trying to make these like really beautiful fine furniture, essentially like cubes over and over again. Like I was just trying to make a really nice rectangle, basically. And I had a very thoughtful mentor, a woman named Susan Iverson, who's a great weaver, on my committee, and she was like, let me look at your sketchbook. And I got out my sketchbook, and she's like, your sketchbook is full of pirates and like goofy illustrations of castles and a sheep that keeps killing itself on every other page in some interesting way. Like, where is that in the rectangles that you keep making? Like, this is you. These rectangles don't seem to be you. And I realized at that point that she was giving me permission to play, and that has been something that, like, even with really sad or hard topics, I'm always going to approach them through humor and play.
Yeah. That's interesting because you alluding to that, like figuring out who you are as an artist. One of the things I was thinking about asking both of you was, you both have such singular styles that you've come to, right? Which is marvelous. You know, when you were young and starting to study and become artists, like, was there an idea? Like, I think about as an artist myself, like, who I thought I wanted to be as a painter when I was young is not at all what I ended up being. And eventually you become who you are despite yourself, right? So was there a certain kind of artist you thought you were going to be, and then you really were this?
What do you go first?
Okay.
Okay. I'm not sure how to answer that. I can tell you a couple anecdotes, which is that because I do so much with color and painting, I spend so much time at it. People would ask me, like, do you ever just make like painting, just do stuff on the wall like a flat two-dimensional thing?
Yeah.
And I just have never in my life been able to wrap my head around that. Like, I couldn't stand in front of a flat thing and just do it like you do.
Yeah.
And so there's something about the object making that I need, is like the license to make what I want to make.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I have like a, there's a couple, there's a person who I've always admired, like the clarity and the sort of rigor, the historical furniture, Garrett Rietveld, who made the red blue chair.
Yeah.
And a bunch of objects that are actually quite different from each other, and those are sort of like the make me weak in the knees object that are sort of real touchstones for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a good answer. Katie?
What was the question? Who did I want to be?
No, and I guess what I'm trying to so I paint really tight these kind of weird, figurative stuff.
No, I
it doesn't matter.
But
I thought I wanted to be I wanted to move a lot of big paint around, big brush strokes, and that I was going to be Alice Neal or somebody and I'm not that at all. It's weird,
Okay, so this is what I'll say. That there's a lot of ways that I could answer that. I think I didn't come from a craft or a fine sort of woodworking background. Nobody in my sort of direct family. My dad breaks into a cold sweat when he sees a hammer. My mom is much more capable, but not interested really in building stuff unless she's got a party coming and she needs, But I think I thought that I was going to be some kind of artist or maker because I was better at drawing than anything else, but I was pretty terrible at just about everything else. And then when I sort of started approaching fine woodworking, when I realized that there was a place outside of art school where people were really making things that would last, which was important to me. The sculptures that I saw people make in school and then chuck in the dumpster, 6 months later, it was disheartening. And I wanted to make things that lived with people and that people lived with. I sort of was looking through the pages of a fine woodworking type magazine, and I was sort of trying to get there, but I didn't really understand. I didn't have sort of a background to even understand the diagrams that were in those. So I ended up sort of learning woodworking in the space between undergrad and grad school by looking at industrial spaces around me. So and you can't see in this work, but I assemble things in a woodworking world in a way that's more industrial than it is woodworking. And people have always been like, that's your signature style. I'm like, that's because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And I think that one of the things that has always worked for me is to approach stuff and not know and just try, because I end up getting to more interesting sort of spaces than if I were sort of following by rote something that somebody else had done. So I sort of lucked into a signature style in some ways by being just terrible at the thing you were supposed to do.
Right. Yeah.
Which can sometimes be a huge help.
Yeah. No, I think that's true for a lot of artists, actually.
Right. Yeah, I was terrible at this thing, but I accidentally do this thing well.
Yeah, that works, yeah. Well, so speaking of signature styles, and correct me if I'm wrong, you might have done other work that isn't, I know that a lot of your work is painted, and the last time we talked about you using reclaimed wood, a lot of found wood, and that although some people might really, really like working with reclaimed wood in that way and having all these different kinds of wood, you really wanted to unify it all, and that's how you started doing pattern and everything, which I think is super interesting. But these pieces don't have any of that. Was that hard for you to?
It was sort of a function of it's different. This show was really interesting for me in part because I could sort of put it all in a shoebox and just carry it here. I've never had that luxury before. And in part because they're just sketches. I shouldn't say just sketches, but they're sketches. And this is, one of the wonderful things about showing with Tom is that I get to have conversations with him about work, which we do anyway, but there's a bit of a drive to it when you actually have a show coming up. And Tom was so good about saying, anything can be in the show. And then I kept saying, no, I want something that sort of speaks to these stoops to be in there. And I sort of started working toward these stair forms, and I was like, I think I could do some of these. And he's like, and they don't have to be big. You can make small. They can be sketches, and they'll be powerful in their own way. And so Tom was the one who sort of gave me the license to play. I do, most of these are cut just on a bandsaw, and then some of them are reassembled, but largely they're cut on a bandsaw and just left. And I do exercises like this with my students to get them to discover form, because it's a great way to have an idea of where you're going, and then to sort of discover sort of accidentally a lot of other stuff on the way. The offcuts, there's probably 60% offcuts up here and 40% the thing I was actually trying to make, because the offcuts half the time were way more interesting than the form that I thought I was going to keep. And so I think that that was really lovely. But yeah, I know it was delightful to come home and be like, I made 7 pieces. That has never happened to me in my life. Definitely felt like cheating.
Yeah, I think Tom's took a little longer.
A lot longer. Mom was slaved away for months, and I was like, I just ripped down 12 of these things in 2 days.
Well, so these pieces are stunning, by the way. These 3 pieces, I mean, great. These are quite fantastic. And I think with these pieces and a lot of your work, you force the viewer to rethink about how they engage with everyday objects, right?
Hopefully.
I think so. I mean, that's an intention.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is I think then, if I see a show of your work or just one piece, and I have to think about, why aren't chairs designed the way they are? Why can't it tumble around? Why is a bench made this way? Like I think about that blanket chest you made where, you realize people just pile things on top of blanket chests, and so why not have it open by pulling out? But I think hopefully it does what really good art does, that it also changes the rest of things. So maybe we rethink and are more present with other objects, even in addition to yours. Is that something that you think a lot about?
That was really good. I'm not sure I can improve on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk a little bit about these.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so the sequence...
Are you going to get up and move around it?
I'll just point.
Okay, great.
So the sequence was I made that one first, and then I made this one, and then I made that one. And a couple of things that were a little bit unusual about these is when I started putting them together, they were sort of deep dives. I didn't quite know how they were going to end up, or if they were going to come together. And so for that one, I actually built a full-size plywood mock-up to sort of see how it was going to go together. And then it actually, in a way, that one sort of has a plywood structure inside it, and then it's skinned with those slats. And so I guess what I'm interested in is the idea of offering sort of multiple seating loads, and the idea of more than one person sitting in relationship to each other, and how that works. And that's kind of a thing that I've revisited a bunch of times in a bunch of different situations. And so Bird and I have made some, you mentioned them, but we've made some big things that were sort of like big front steps of like official front stoops, but without the house attached. And it's just so that they're very flexible and people can sort of organize themselves how they want to organize. And so these were a little bit thinking about how do you take that big giant thing and move it into something that might be a little bit more in the domestic scale or domestic realm. I don't know if they fit in a house. I have a tendency to make white elephant objects. They're very hard for people to place. And that's just sort of inherent in the way I think about them. And so I did that one, and then this one, it was really interesting to me to see how it came out looking a little bit sort of circusy, or like it's a thing that a seal that climbs up on to balance the ball on the end of their nose.
I hadn't thought about that, but now that's all I'll ever think about.
It wasn't my intent at all in the beginning. I was interested in when you do this geometrical thing that you get all these different scales. I was sort of interested in the idea of offering multiple options so that you can sit wherever it fits your body.
Right.
And I don't know if that yet. And so when I sort of stepped back and looked at it, and it was sort of like platform to perform on, that was kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
And
For the elephant in the room.
what was that?
I said for the elephant in the room.
Yes. And so then that's that one. And then this one, I was sort of revisiting this kind of ongoing idea that I've messed with a few times, which is a piece of furniture that doesn't really have a bottom or a top, that can be oriented in space in different ways. So this one go like this, and then it can go like that. And it's, I guess for me it's just sort of an idea to mess around with. It's probably a pretty bad idea for a piece of furniture in a house. But I sort of don't care. I like that, I like sort of moving it around, and the different sort of, it is actually this thing made in life size. And And the other thing that was kind of surprising to me, as you can tell, some of this gets kind of, I start and then it gets a little bit out of control. Like that one painting is relatively straightforward.
Right.
And then it got more complex here, and then it got ridiculous in that one. But
Oh, that was what I was thinking. Like when you're designing the forms, do you start to think
I
about
start
the
to
painting
think
right
about it.
away?
Yeah, I do. I'm thinking about it while I'm building it, but then I just start kind of messing around. And one other thing that was a little bit on these two, I started using masking tape, which is something I haven't usually done much of. I usually do my best with my hand, and I sort of enjoy the irregularity of
Yeah.
the hand. But some of these patterns would have been really hard to do. And I mean, my hand's not as steady as it used to be, so stuff that I used to be able to do, I can't really do. And this is the first time I've actually liked using masking tape. And I've always sort of had like a suspicion about masking tape,
Right.
like it's a cheat or something.
If you think about the number of stripes in all of Tom Loeser's work, going back,
Yeah.
how far you want to go, and
Yeah.
you think he hand painted without masking off every single one of those lines, and just discovered this in 2025.
I know, and I was walking up to the Willie Street hardware store like every 2.5 hours to buy more masking tape. But anyways, it was sort of,
Yes,
it was sort of interesting, and in a way, I'm sort of,
Tape is a tool, Tom.
tape is a tool, yes, and so that's a little bit how they unfolded for me, and it was really fun. With each one of them, I was never quite sure in the middle if they were actually going to come together and work.
Yeah. Tell people, like, I think it's just interesting if you look at these, how they're constructed, because it's really complicated.
It was really complicated, yeah. It's so fun. It's funny to keep it looking simple. The
Right.
stuff inside actually got really complicated.
Yeah.
So they're mostly built with ply. This one also has a sort of a plywood structure inside, and then the slats are applied. So I have all the slats. I have hundreds of slats sort of organized in my shop when I'm doing the painting,
Yeah.
and then the slats get attached after they're painted.
But the first one you put the slats on from the outside,
That's right.
And then it
Yeah.
fills so many holes.
Yeah. So these I screwed on from the outside, and then I hated having to cover up the holes. It took too long.
Right.
And so on these two, I actually figured out how to screw it from the inside. And
So then the last panel just has to be screwed.
yeah, and so the last
Okay.
panel just sort of got glued
They're
on.
puzzles.
Got glued on at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
It's
crazy.
Yeah.
Tom, a recent piece you made, you were working on this bench that had seating that flipped back and forth.
Right.
And you went out of your way to sort of, we had a conversation about the mechanism to make sure that a child didn't get their fingers crushed.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about people rolling that around. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking you suddenly weren't concerned about being a child crusher.
You think that's a child?
I don't really, but I see sort of like I just think, like,
Wow.
well, I was just thinking, I would have loved that piece when I was like 5.
Oh yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would have crushed a toe
Yeah.
so bad
Yeah,
under
yeah,
it,
yeah.
probably, and
Yeah.
probably not one of mine, probably like
Yeah.
my little sisters, like.
Yeah.
So I'm just sort of curious about like you sort of like making these things that actually feel kind of like blocks for adults.
Yeah. That's a good description. I mean, I didn't really think about it too much with
Yeah.
that one. They don't seem. I did kind of keep. I tried to keep the top heights at seats that you could access directly. A taller person can access directly from the floor, so they're sort of like tall bar stools.
Right.
You don't have to climb up. I did think about like kids falling off of them, so I tried to keep them within a certain zone.
Right.
I don't know if I'm within the. I
How
don't know.
about falling children, not crushing children?
You
Yeah.
can't think about everything.
That's funny. Okay. Well, so now let's talk about you a little bit more. So in all of these fantastic things, well, I have two thoughts. One is, did any of these make you think, I want to make bigger versions of these? Because some of these forms are just fantastic. And then which ones did you start with? Do you remember like how it evolved?
I think so. And I'm going to stand, but I'll try and stay here. I actually started these at, I was teaching this class
Yes.
at Haystack,
Right.
which is a school up in Maine this summer. And one of the wonderful faculty there in the metals program, Everett Hoffman and Taylor, I forgot his sort of co-teacher's name, last name, Taylor
King.
They gave their students an assignment to make a ring in 2 hours. And I found out about it at lunch, and I ran back to the wood shop, and I was like, yo, we gotta make rings in 2 hours. We've got a Forstner bit that's a 3/4 inch. We can do it. And so I ended up making some rings with my students that were stairs. And that's where these little things came from, was that, you know, they're rings. And this is the first one that I made there. It's sort of like my take on Haystack, which is this beautiful school, beautiful architecture on the coast of Maine. And it was so much fun to sort of think about your hands becoming landscape in that way. And I have made stairs a lot. I have made stairs that look sort of like this. Like over the last 20 years, I've probably made 5 or 6 kind of like these little things, and I always call them flights, because one of the things that I'm so interested in terms of stairs is the language that we use. That stairs, the collective noun for stairs, flight, is really beautiful to me. Yeah. The fact that the spaces where we stop are called landings. Like, I think that there's something like really beautiful and really sort of like this sort of super subtle. I mean, it's so cheesy, but it's a subtle reminder that like everything is doable if it's bite-sized, like one step at a time. Literally, we say one step at a time, right? Like, how do you get where you're trying to go? So I think that stairs are really beautiful.
Rise and run are pretty nice words too.
Rise and run are lovely. So I had done some of those, and then when I started, actually, let me see. When I started, I think I started with some of the most simple ones. You know, so I did some that looked sort of like chairs, and then some was just like the idea of a stair cut out, and then as I started making, like, this is offcuts from two, and let me see, what are some of the other offcut ones? There's a piece that's gone now, but that's an offcut from one of the previous pieces. This is an offcut from that, right? And it just became its own thing. So I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm messing up the whole thing. It's a good thing we're done tomorrow, because
is that its own offcut?
That's its own offcut, yeah. So this was interesting. This was something that I discovered kind of early on, and I kept doing it over and over and over again. So I was like, this is fascinating. This one, this outside piece is the piece I cut off of here. And this piece came off of there. I don't know if people can see that. And like, this one started off as a rectangle. This piece was over here. This piece was over there. So cutting them apart sort of showed me a lot. In this one, this piece was here, and this piece was there. And so it's all the offcuts from
itself. That's great.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, it's almost like the things you cut off of a thing are related to the thing. So yeah, I mean, so that's that answer, is like that they all kind of came from each other. I ended up building a lot sort of like at the same time, which was so much fun. And then in terms of making them big, I think that they'll inform stuff.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that's magical about these is their size, and like the fact that they're so not the scale of the body that they can kind of take you into a different world. Like, I like them as like these objects that allow you to imagine. Like, I've always loved, since I was little, I've always imagined, especially when it's been raining and there are like little rivers going everywhere through a city, I've always pretended that I was tiny and imagined what it was like to be on a leaf boat. But I still do it. I'm 47 years old and I still do this. And I think that there's something about these objects that lets me imagine that I'm tiny and like think about the world in that way, which is really lovely. So they're like portals for me. So I don't know that I need them to be big necessarily.
Did you make these things before these, or when did you make these?
I made a couple of them at Haystack, and I made one right before. Remember we met?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you brought them. Katie brought them to the Victory for coffee, and our table was really quickly surrounded by curious
all of
people.
them sort of put down and like become these like weird little, and And that one doesn't stay up, so it flips the other way. Oops. So yeah, those were, I was imagining like Tom's pieces as being giant, and like how would children imagine like climbing them or getting up them? So I was making stairs to sort of get up to the top stoops, or ramps.
So the other thing is they are all stairs to nowhere
Or anywhere,
or anywhere.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
which is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how that plays in with anything about flights and
Right. Yeah, they're just flights for the fun of it.
yeah,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Yeah, when someone was helping me, it may have been you, Tom, someone was helping me sort of place them in places, and I was like, well, only put the stairs that go up on that shelf. And I got a look, and I was like, yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say, like, there's a couple that have like little houses, but it was actually more exciting, more
like
interesting
that,
to sort of like leave them as just like, you know, you could set them on any piece of furniture and turn that piece of furniture into a massive thing, so
Right.
like, imagination-wise.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. What is there any piece of Tom's here that you are particularly like? I mean, there's three of them, and they're all so great and related. But do you have anything like any thoughts about any of them that?
I mean, I'm still sort of I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that every other line that he's ever painted wasn't masked. But I think Tom's forms are so beautiful, and they sort of do the same thing that I was trying to do at a small scale but big. Like, these are just a little bit bigger than the domestic space, right? They're just a little bit larger than a set of stairs or a stoop. And so, like, I think that they have this sort of like I'm imagining what it would be like to get to live with one of these in my home, and like how that would like allow me to change my relationship to my space. You know, I could walk up that and touch my ceiling, which is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's so cool. You know, like, I think that's kind of an amazing thing. Like, furniture doesn't usually let you do that. So I think that as objects, they're really lovely. But I also am obsessed with pattern. I often am thinking about pattern. And the thing that I'm still sort of figuring out how to approach as an adult artist is color. And I think that the colors, like, I understand sort of the colors, I think, in the patterns that's happening over there. But these two are just wild. And the fact that they feel like they have this logic that I immediately sense and I'm totally comfortable with, but then I try to suss out what the process was, or what the actual pattern is, and I'm like flabbergasted by it again. So yeah, and the ways that they shift when you walk around them.
Right.
I just think
Yeah,
that
this one in particular, like the
Yeah.
pattern and the color is so sophisticated and seems like it must have taken a lot of contemplation.
Well, each plane is a family of colors, and they're all different.
But there's not a dud in the bunch. Like, if I had been mixing up a family of colors, I would have been like, well, that looks like poop.
You can make poop look good depending on what you put next to it.
You can. Yeah. No, I think I came and saw that one immediately after you had got most of the panels back on it, and you were like, there's 60 colors I mixed up for this, but then this one, you were like, there were more than that.
Yeah.
And you mix them. I mean, the old-fashioned milk paint, the stuff that Tom and I sort of both use as a base often, you can add color to it. You can use acrylics to change those colors. And but the base colors, there's like 12 of them. There aren't very many of them. So we're talking about like so many mixes that it would be hard to recreate if you didn't like that, or if you needed to replace a piece, like getting it mixed again.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that did happen to me while I was painting these is Bert and I stumbled on some quilt books that we actually hadn't seen before. There were newer quilt books that have really good stuff in them, and color doesn't work the same when you're painting poplar slabs as when you're using it in quilting.
Right.
Yeah.
But there was still something about looking at the quilts and seeing like the way some of the color combinations just like sing, And so it's and just sort of trying to figure out like what's the version of it that happens when you're painting on wood. It's different, but it got me really excited about color again. Yeah.
Do you do base coats on that? Do you do like a white base coat, or is it right onto the wood?
It's right onto the wood, but with one color, and then just keeping adding more colors.
Yeah, so you're dealing with that first color
Yeah.
plus the wood underneath all of it.
So are there any of these pieces of Katie's that you're like?
Well, yeah. I mean, every time I
Fascinating.
walk around, I see a different one. You know, that gets me really excited. But I think it's more for me. It's more that Katie's style of working and Katie's approach.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, I've always admired that. If you go for a walk with Katie, at the end of the walk, Katie will have a bunch of wood under her arm to take back to the studio. And I've always really thought that was really super cool. And
Like from trees or
no,
just
from dumpsters.
dumpster scraps?
Garbage cans.
Trees are too fresh. Something that's really dirty.
But it really is, you know, it's a very consistent ideology that really makes sense, and it's very integrated and it has a lot of integrity. And then, so these, yeah, so it's really sort of the stuff Katie's style of work that I really admire. I wanted to say one thing, that I think there is something really nice about the way you're using this space in this gallery, because I don't think this kind of show would have happened without the way you sort of set up this as a space. It's unusual, like in gallery situations, that you have this sort of set-aside space and you're sort of encouraging people to be experimental in that space.
Yeah, especially in a commercial gallery, where, like, you know, like you have the bread and butter is like actually selling stuff to allow there to be a couple of weirdos who kind of don't know what they're doing till, you know, a little later on. One weirdo and a perfectly lovely. But yeah.
No, we do. We encourage being weirdos in this space.
No, it's really, really nice. And I think that the space, sort of like this kind of dichotomy between the wood walls and the white walls, there's something really lovely about that. And I think that that's like walking up the stairs and looking in and seeing like I didn't paint any of these pieces. I left them all raw. I didn't even sand them. Like I liked all of the marks. There's like a little bit of fuss, but not much. And so having that raw wood kind of singing against Tom's paint and stuff, and then that against these walls, and then the way that it changes over here, there's something really interesting about it.
The space is kind of magical, like you know, I'm in here with your show and I think, oh yeah, this is one of my favorite shows. It's perfect in the space, and then the next show comes in and I'm like, no, this show is perfect. All the artists just love showing in here, and it's a great. You'll have to do it again.
Oh yeah.
Whatever your next.
What do we do now?
I don't know.
Well, we had a name for it.
Yeah, we
You did actually. You already had a name.
Tiebreaker.
Tiebreaker. Okay, so what do you each have coming up in your personal studios or careers or private life that you're really excited about? Is there anything cool coming up?
I'm going into just clean, nothing, just going in and just.
Okay, that's actually exciting.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's not like
exciting.
just go in your studio and just whatever you feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bird lobbies me though. She's been. And
Just
so
pretend it's going to be a piece of furniture and just literally sit on it.
well, like Bird can go into her studio and make like a bunch of stuff in a day, and that's like I can't even wrap my head around that. And so that's like
Is he exaggerating? Can
That's
you make a bunch of stuff in a day?
Well, not stuff that I want everybody to see, but
So that's I mean it is sort of a thing that I would like to be able to do. That's why I think why I enjoy it.
Right.
So the next one, I have to make 3
Giant.
complicated
Really
things,
complicated.
and then you just have to jive off of those things.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good.
Game on.
Game on.
Yeah. Is there anything coming up you're excited about?
I'm doing something kind of fun. Many years ago, I designed this sort of complicated desk form that essentially is 3/4 circles, and they're nesting in one inside the other, so they go down in size, and then they sort of open up. They kind of unfurl into a desk.
Oh.
Sort of hard to explain, but I drew this thing in like 2011. I was like, that's a really good idea. I'm never gonna have time to make that piece. And then I got a grant through UW to make it, and so I'm working on the first giant quarter circle thing now. So I'm making a piece of furniture, which this is sort of an interesting thing. Before I taught here, I taught at Harrod School of Art and Design, and I was running a program called Furniture Design with Corey Robinson, and I decided there, because it was called Furniture Design, that every other piece I would make would be furniture. I would make a functional thing, and then I would make a weird thing. And it didn't always work. Sometimes the functional thing became not functional by accident because it looked cooler upside down. But usually that's how I did it. And since I've been here, I've sort of let myself play and be more sculptural. And it's actually sort of nice. Like, it's such a good prompt to have to think about the human body and what the needs of a human body are, you know, as somebody leans against something. And so that's actually been really fun. I don't have any plans for where I'm going to show it or what I'm going to do with it. If you need a very complicated desk, you let me know.
Okay.
In like 4 months.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. That sounds great. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Should we open it up to questions from the rest of you? Yes.
Could you get your notes out again from when you started the intros? Because I think you said was it problems? Some were real and some were imagined, or something like that?
Tools for problems, real and imagined.
Okay, so my question is there like it's kind of a two-part question. What percentage of it was real, and what part was imagined? If you had to break it up into like, oh, it was like 90-10 or 50-50.
Such a good question. No one's ever asked me to do the percentages on what the that was actually a title for an exhibition that I had like about 10 years ago now, 8 or 9 years ago. And it was because I had just made a drawing compass, but instead of having a place for one pencil, it had like 3 extra arms with 3 extra pencils. So in theory, you could draw 4 concentric circles at one time, but it was such a pain in the ass to use that it would have been much, much easier to just do it with a single compass. And I made that piece kind of in response to, well, both a need to draw 4 concentric circles, but also thinking about how annoying it was to work in a bureaucratic system like a giant state university, and what it felt like if that feeling were a tool. Was this thing. It was sort of my way of saying I'm annoyed by the systems in which I live.
So that was a real problem?
That was a real problem, and the tool was a sort of an imagined tool, or like a not really functional tool to sort of talk about that problem. So the tools are always like I made a 92-inch unfolding ruler and like all kinds of strange things that if you needed that thing, it would be so useful. But you're probably never going to actually need that thing. But I like the idea that that I can live. You know, Tom talks about this really beautifully, like thinking about how to subvert function a little bit to get people to be aware of their lives. And I like doing the same thing, not just with furniture, but with the objects that we use to help us through the day. Because I think that those are sometimes you're not sure what problem you're trying to solve. You're just solving the problem that the tool at hand is there for. And that's not always the problem that you want to solve. There's sort of a long story that I tell at openings about when I first got out of grad school. I moved in with my girlfriend at the time into a house that her great-grandfather had built, and he had gone deaf at the end of his life. One day I'm sitting at the kitchen table, I look up over the fridge, and there's a little green light bulb sticking out of the wall. And I was like, Lizzie, what's the little green light bulb sticking up out of the wall above the refrigerator? She said, the toilet light? And I was like, what? Her grandfather, I think, not her great-grandfather, her grandfather had come in from the fields every day. He'd gone to use the bathroom. He had come back out and he had sat at the kitchen table, for 5 minutes to make sure that it stopped running, because it would run, and he would just listen for it to make sure it would stop, because it ran a long time anyway. And as he got older, he went deaf, and he couldn't hear it anymore. So he rigged up a plunger to the back of the toilet to a switch with electrical lines going out into this little green light bulb that had come out of some like tractor dashboard. And he did it all in like 45 minutes one morning with stuff he already had. And when people asked why he didn't just fix the toilet, he said, that's not the problem I had. The problem is that I like being able to spend 10 minutes at the table and have an excuse to. And so I think about problems and like how to solve the ones I actually care about a lot.
So basically, there's a real problem,
Right,
but it's not a real problem. But then that gives birth
right,
to this infinite creativity. So the real problem that annoys the hell out of you gets transmuted
right.
into a creative, infinite space.
100% real and 100% imagined.
Yeah, and that's like these stairs too, because it's like you had the problem of making all these stairs, but actually all of them are in some sort of an ascension process. And the only way you can complete the stair is to either, well, you can't. I mean, you have to turn around and go down, or you have to die. Right?
I guess so.
And I mean, I feel like the feeling that I got from these pieces was like, this is like somebody with a soul that's like struggling to ascend beyond the problem, or something like that.
That's nice.
But
It is nice.
sometimes it's not a problem. Like, Katie recently made a really tall piece that holds, what's the seed?
It's a maple helicopter, a maple samara, right?
It has an arm that raises it up like about to the rafter level, and then you pull a string and it drops the seed and it just spins down. And that's more just like a vision than a problem.
It's more vision. I've been talking to friends recently about, because we're all sort of like thinking about grief a lot, and a lot of my friends are in the trades in Madison, so they, I'm buds with a steam fitter and with an electrician and a general contractor, and we get together on Sundays and we have this lovely dinner. And I was talking about that piece and how I could turn that piece into something that you could install in your house. Because like we need better like systems for joy in our homes, you know, like you just need, every once in a while you need a maple helicopter to just calm down to the floor really, really slowly in your house in December when you're kind of sad. And so like thinking about that, yeah, totally.
So the problem in that case is sadness.
Right, or just like,
Sadness.
Oh.
the
Or
problem is like,
Yeah.
like just needing to remember that the world is magic, like right now, even as it is. I
Right.
think is the
That's and I think also the use of the word problem is very loaded, because it could just be like something that needs a solution. It doesn't mean it's like, you know,
right.
it could just be a challenge that needs a solution.
Yeah.
But the word problem is so loaded with like negativity and heaviness.
Right.
And they just, all of these feel really light to me, like they really do feel inspiring to me.
Thank you.
You know, it's quite different when you get older, how you look at things. And for me, I would look at these things very metaphorically, and when I was younger, and how beautiful they were. But now I think, well, I look at them, and I wonder where all the handrails are.
I'm gonna work on that, and I'll get back to you. Don't tell OSHA. Tiny OSHA's coming for me.
And you were worried about Tom crushing children. You're just killing tiny little versions of all of us.
I just assumed that everyone's very, very like sure-footed in there.
Any other questions? Yes.
Tom, especially, can you talk about your experience with your materials going from 2D, which is just paint, ostensibly using brushes where you're removed from the actual pigment. Sometimes you can feel it with your brush, you know, with its it needs more gel medium or oil or whatever, or it needs to be more resistant. And then the experience that you have, how much do you handle and how much do you sort of relish the sensations of the wood that you're using? And Katie, for you too, you have so many different kinds of woods without stain or paint on them. Each wood is different. And so I'm just interested in, I have more experience in 2D, where you remove the printmaker. You're removed from the actual medium. But you are touching this with your hands all the time. So I'm just curious about that process and what that gives to you.
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess I should start by saying, like, I'm going to go way back, because when I learned woodworking, I learned in a sort of like a woodworking school that was called the Program in Artisanry, and it was very much about joinery and sort of had a Scandinavian aesthetic of the beauty of the natural wood. And there was something, and a bunch of students actually started painting wood, and it was somewhat controversial actually, because there was the beauty of the material and you're just slapping this skin on top of it. And so that's sort of a thing that I've thought about a lot, and so I feel like a certain sort of responsibility when I use a flat surface. I think you talked about the flatness of it. When I use a flat surface, it has to be in the service of making the object read better, like making the composition work better or making the form work better. And so it's a skin or a color in service of a visual function. And so there is a thing with the, so I do my color, I save all my coffee cups and I sort of mix them up in coffee cups, and I have a refrigerator full of these coffee cups of different color. So that's very much of a sort of in the hand, on the fly, sort of doing colors and comparing the mix of colors. And then wood is just like, wood is just wood, like you sort of can't beat it. I mean, this is not fancy wood, this is just white oak, but it's so incredible, and you can't match it, you can't compete with it. So I've always thought about the color as something that is actually it's doing something very different from what the wood is doing. And I actually like the way the two work together. And I don't know, sometimes I feel like making a piece that's all wood is actually really, it's tricky to pull off. It can get, wood as a color, if you stick it on the color wheel, it's like this much of the color wheel. The most exotic imported tropical wood is here, and the other one is over here. And so it's a fairly narrow color range, but it does this other different thing with its grain, and it's got this whole integrated history that's built into it of the tree and all the information that's there about the tree. So it's sort of like, hopefully it's both and, like it's the color is not negating the wood, but it's working with the wood. And yes, I think inherent in your question was there's an appreciation when you're working with the wood material, and it's just different from working with the paint material. But also another thing I think that probably both of us do is we use paint in a way that it's a little bit less on these pieces, but actually if you look closely at all of these pieces, the wood is actually coming through on every edge. So that's just a thing that I've always had trouble with, sort of super glossy lacquer finishes that are like automotive finishes, like the first scratch is painful. Like I'm hoping that these are pieces that will get beat up, that they'll age in a way that the wood starts to show through, and that's all good. I don't know, those are some of my thoughts. Did that get at your question at all?
No, when you're sawing it and cutting it apart, how does it feel to you? You're just like, oh, this is my material and I just put it together this way? Or do you stop and think like, wow, this is very smooth, this is very rough, this is very interesting, I'm holding this in my hands?
Yeah. Let's see. I guess one thing I would say is, over the years, all the years I've been doing it, I've come to like more and more ways of working with wood that don't generate a lot of sawdust, like if that's possible. But it's really real because there's ways of working with the wood that are more about cutting and not having to sand forever. And I've sort of evolved towards being interested in moving in that direction. And so actually, yeah, so all of these slats just have the texture coming straight off the bandsaw. So the bandsaw makes plenty of dust, but nothing is sanded post-bandsaw. But yeah, it's very tactile. Everything is different, and it's a very cranky material. Like it fights back.
Yes, Eric.
So, it's sort of, nobody's talking about this, but Katie, you salvage all your materials, which interests me because I've been doing that for a while, and I can't use the material without thinking about where it came from.
Right.
And the various stages of how it got to me or whatever. I mean, does that, like when you're pushing it through the bandsaw, do you think about that?
I do. I definitely do. I mean, I made all the shelves, and this is sort of embarrassing, but it's silly. But the shelves were all given to me by my friend Leah, who is a general contractor, and whenever they pull a house apart, they'll give me like some of the sort of pieces that they salvage. It feels like older wood, and it's got sort of tight rings. So they're all stair treads, which I thought was sweet. And it doesn't matter, no one needs to know that, but I was just like, this is...
I think we do need to know.
That reaction means that everyone needs to know that. But it's also really pitchy pine, meaning that it's really sappy. So it got the tools gross, and it smelled like Christmas in my shop, but it was just an absolute pain in the ass to clean up. But yeah, I mean, like all of these, there's a lot of redwood. The darker sort of red material up here is redwood that came from siding from a house over on the west side. That was a friend of Tom's who clued me in that there was a siding over there. And it was coated with lead paint. And so like the step one of working with that material is taking it to the bandsaw and cutting off the lead paint instead of sanding it. And all of that means I'm suited up. So these are the little offcuts. I save all of when I build something big out of that material, all the little offcuts go into a bucket, and then it's like nice to pull from that bucket and be like, oh cool, this is really nice. These probably mostly don't, but a lot of them have nail holes and like stuff in them. And I clean up the material a lot, but the nail holes and stuff will stay behind. And some of them, I'm sure, I think a couple of the walnut ones came from friends who gave it to me. A student's father has been milling lumber and brought some cottonwood, which is not good to work with. It's really stringy material, but it's really, really fair in color. All these white pieces, that's cottonwood, which I can see now why it's not a commercially viable lumber to use. It's like, it's stringy. Like if you cut it, there's little strings, and if you, normally on most woods, if you just sort of wipe those off, they come off. In this case, they would tear and so you have to be really careful about, your tools have to be really sharp to use them. So thinking about them and like how much I love this wood and also hate it. But definitely, like it's kind of fun to sort of pull those scraps out. The problem with using reclaimed wood, which you probably have this, is like I've rescued this thing, oh now I've used this thing, oh now I have smaller things that came off of that, what do I do with those? And then you use those and you're like, yes, and you're like, oh, now I have even smaller things. And like, at what point do you say, I can relinquish this back to the trash stream?
I do have a big wood burner in my studio.
The Sunday dinners are often around a bonfire, and I'm always very grateful to take my bucket of tiny, tiny scraps and just be like, oh, I can let you go.
The littlest kindling ever.
The littlest, cutest kindling ever. Yeah, people are always like, you're going to get rid of this? And I'm like, don't ask me that. You worked so hard to put that in that bucket to begin with.
I mean, this may be a little bit, the horizontal surfaces on that piece are cork. And the cork is this material that I keep dabbling in because I'm really intrigued by it. And I think, you know, in this time, there's a lot of materials that are out there that make these sort of green claims to be environmental and all that. But it's everything I've learned about cork, and I think it really holds up. Like, it's really a cool, amazing material. And so I've been sort of playing around with that. And I'm sort of interested in, you know,
The source.
Yeah, Yeah, it's like the bark of a tree. It's crazy. It's insane. But it really is a cool material.
Anybody else? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. The last day and the last few minutes of this show, and we'll be so sad. I think that if anybody feels like it, Faith may have opened a couple of bottles of wine downstairs, and there's some sparkling water, and if anyone wants to linger and chat down at the counter, there's some vegetables.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for
Thank you
coming.
guys. Thank you.